Patience, summoner.
Double kill.
Trust.
Legendary. Your team has destroyed a turret. Your team has destroyed a
It's
turret.
all slick.
Legendary. Victory.
And took it out right before I decided to play with it.
Okay.
I was going to play 3 Blind Obedience and 1 Immortal
That's
Servitude.
precisely what I was thinking.
Yeah, because you could cast it for 4 and bring back a lot of 1-ofs. Or even cast it for 5 and bring back, you could do some sort of mass chump or sack a bunch of stuff and activate a bunch of triggers off of the Blood Artist, and then cast Immortal Servitude and bring it all back and do it all again. It's a way to really, you can, see, now that I'm thinking about it, I wish I had played. I think I'm going to give that deck, I'm going to give that deck another try, actually, now that you're saying that, because I feel like that deck wants to jump from, that deck can, combo out of nowhere. Your opponent takes, 13 right? And they're like, whoa. I was at 14, now I'm at 2. What happened? And it's like, well...
I sacked a Gravecrawler a bunch of times.
You blocked a couple times, and I sacked this, and I stopped this. So, actually, I like that idea, actually. I'm gonna try that deck a little more, and I'm gonna try Immortal Servitude, because I really do believe in that card. And we talked about that white-black mid-range deck that I want to build, but this may be kind of more what I was thinking.
And I feel like as a 1 of that Immortal Servitude, it just gives you that, mid/late game, that, okay, and we're gonna start again.
Right.
Because I can just start again with all my creatures on the board.
Yeah. So and with Blood Artists on the table, that actually makes that a lot more lethal because you're getting a lot of value out of those deaths to begin with. On that note, how has in the deck that you're talking about? I know I convinced you to put 1 Unburial Rites in there. Has it been performing? Because I feel like in the meta that may be something that you want to take out.
Has been slain.
I think it's been doing pretty well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That when they kill a Trostani or something, and I don't have another one in my hand yet, and I want to get that going again, or maybe it is just like a life gain thing, and I just need to gain more life.
Get Thragtusk back.
Right, exactly. Or get a Restoration Angel that I had to flash in and block, and then they Searing Spirit because they can't deal with it long term.
Sure.
Because it's a flyer.
Sure.
So they do deal with it right away, but then okay, now I'm playing a Thragtusk. Now next turn I'm gonna Unbury Rights, and they don't see that coming, which is a thing too. Just the element of surprise, I feel like is pretty valuable with that card as a 1-of, like
Excellent.
you suggested. So yeah, I don't want to do that.
Well, the reality is that Liliana the Veil, which is my favorite card ever now. She's absolutely my most favorite card I've ever played in Magic, and I'm so glad that I've gotten a chance to play her again. She's starting to see some play again, and we talked about how she may actually be a bit of a problem for this deck, which is one of the reasons we put Unburial Rites in the first place. And also, Domri Raid doesn't necessarily have beneficial fight mechanics against your deck, but he does have, your deck really isn't giving him any reason not to draw more cards. So you might get into an instance of planeswalker issues here or there. Also, something that goes way over the top, like Angel of Serenity, might be an issue.
Right.
So I like the inclusion of the owner.
Yeah. So those changes, trying to see I think that's pretty much the main board changes I've made. In the sideboard, I've got. Oh no, sorry. Actually, 1 tragic slip in the main board too.
Okay.
We kind of talked about this.
1 in the main, and then 2 in the side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's just there's so many times where, and we've talked about this, is doing killing a creature with that mathematical sort of approach, that negative XX.
Also, Boros Reckoner we've seen provide such a stopping force against Thragtusk, which is a big part of your deck.
Right.
Him being able to sort of get in the way of stuff and provide first strike. Also, Obsidian becomes a problem if Boros Reckoner can deal 3 out of the 5 in first strike damage. Because you're talking about, if you blink back Obsidian and then swing and your opponent has Boros Reckoner up, you're going, yeah, he's a 3/3 and a 5/5.
Right.
Well, he still gets, either he gets hit with 3 and bounces 3 back at you, killing both of them.
Right.
Well, he bounces 5 back.
Yeah.
Or he goes first strike, takes 3, Obsidian takes 3 off of first strike, and then if he's in a red deck, he Searing Spears the other 3.
Right.
And this is all before normal step damage. Just killing Obsidian outright. So cards like that you kind of need to clear the way that could provide a little bit of a problem if you're facing a rather resourceful player. Tragic Clip totally helps that. Plus it helps if you got it in your hand, that turn 1 Champion of the Parish, or that turn 1 Stormkirk Noble, or that turn 1 Experiment 1. It's a great way to just sort of very quickly, almost gut shot them just straight out.
Yeah. So 1 Tragic Slip in the main board, 2 in the sideboard. Put 1 Selesnya Charm in the sideboard. I think that's still a great card for like Thundermaw Hellkite. Stuff that's coming in that you need to instant speed get rid of.
Obsidian?
Yeah, right. We talked about this before too. Yeah, Obsidian. Like if they're playing it and they get it out before me for some reason or something, and I don't want to just Legend Rule get rid of mine too because it's a key integral part of mine. So,
how do you feel about Rock's Faith Mender? I mean, as we saw, the answer to the hyper-aggressive mono-red, black-red decks was to start playing multiple copies of Rock's Faith Mender. Your deck obviously supports the mana base for it. How do you feel?
Yeah, that's a definite card I've thought about. And I played it in some other decks. I used to do, and you remember this probably, a huge Trostani life gain deck with Rock's Faith Mender, Trostani, and was that Mythic Tree 013?
Tree of Redemption.
Tree of Redemption.
It's funny you mentioned Tree of Redemption because you know how I usually am at least known around the area for playing those cards that other people aren't remembering. I wouldn't say necessarily that I play better cards than other people. I think I remember cards better than other people. Where I just go, oh, there's an 013 wall that also gives you variably at least 12 life at the most. If you know the card which you tap it and replace your life total with it. That's at 4 mana though.
Right? Yeah, no, I'm not talking about playing that. But but this was like a past deck that I did play for a little bit, and it was based on Chalice of Life.
The Chalice of Life deck.
Right. So it was just try to sprint to a crazy amount of life, and then just Chalice you to death was the idea.
Right.
It was fun. It was not legitimate, but it was fun. You're gonna play a fun deck, do that. Anyway.
No, if you want a fun deck, I got one today.
It's true. That's pretty true. So, but anyway, so I've thought about Rock's Faith. I feel like once I get my engine going, win the current deck, it does fine. So the double life, I'm not sure that I need, and I really like the idea of the Loxodon Smiter because of the 4 power, so I actually get to kill something. I don't like the fact that Rock's Faith Mender doesn't really kill much. So that's sort of a downside. And he, without this, he has a static ability. It's not enter the battlefield. It's like another Trostani, right? You play that, and then you still got to do something. So it's still setting up. And I think at some point I need to. There's a moment of setup with your Mana Dorks and your Farseeks. Then there's a later moment of setup with the Trostani Obsidian. In between those moments, I need to be not setting up. I need to actually be impacting the board and making you rethink things.
Got it.
And Rock's Faith Mender, I don't think makes you rethink things. At least I don't need you to do it there. I need you to look at my Loxodon Smiter and be a little afraid.
Got it. I like it. I'm just noticing your sideboard here. I think because obviously these Naya-human decks are a big problem for a lot of people right now just because of the amount of creatures they pump out that are all substantially fast and powerful. I think the rest in pieces are no longer necessary.
Yeah, well, obsolete.
I think you're going to want Sundering Growths at this point. I mean, the mana cost for you being 2 white, 2 green,
combination of both.
Hybrid, there's no way you would ever not be able to play that card.
Correct.
And again, we talked a long time ago about the profit of playing Sundering Growth right now over Naturalize. is because if you have any kind of deck that produces tokens whatsoever, Thragtusk, Tristani, Armada Worm, your deck does produce a fair amount of tokens. That Sundering Growth gives the optional benefit because it's destroy target artifact or creature, or destroy target artifact or enchantment.
Right.
Populate. That card has the potential to be way better. It could be destroy that, get a 3/3.
Right.
Or destroy that and get a 5/5, I guess, in the optimal situation.
Yeah,
so and that's totally worth it 2 mana. And just because these Naya decks are playing Pacifism as one of the removal spells, they're not interested in killing it, they're interested in
Getting out of the way.
for 2 mana, preventing Thragtusk and Boros Reckoner from actually being able to stop them the way that those decks usually do. So, being able to sort of let them cast Pacifism and then sort of at instant speed not only remove that and maybe get another blocker at the same time makes that card way more powerful. So I definitely would say remove the Rest in Peace from the sideboard, put in 2 Sundering Growths.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Keep in mind again, you can see the actual full deck that's written in the show notes.
Yeah, or I would maybe my thought would be to go to 1 Rest in Peace, just because it's still good against like the control thing. I've had it like kind of stop Tamiyo or hurt Tamiyo from being quite as good. Stop Snapcaster from really doing much at all.
Well, the reality is, it seems like the one deck that's sort of in the best position. I see your logic there, because the one deck that's sort of in the best position to combat Naya humans or these fast aggro decks is the blue, white, red tempo decks, the sort of tempo control decks. I think sort of Jerry Thompson's list might be a slightly better position. Because it's not quite an aggressive. It's not like a blue, white, red mid range. It's more of a tempo control deck.
Right.
If those decks start seeing some influx because people are playing those to beat Naya humans, like we said, you want to beat the deck that beats the best deck. Then you may want the Rest in Peace, because Rest in Peace really sort of ruins that deck. That deck is relying on the graveyard a lot.
Yeah.
With either Rune Chanter's Pike or the Harvest Pyre combo.
Right.
So I could see the argument for Rest in Peace.
I could honestly, there hasn't been many matchups where I've like wanted to bring in 2 Angel of Serenities, because I have 2 in the sideboard right now. So I could potentially see taking out those 2.
The argument for that card is that Jund midrange. We're in a weird spot in Magic right now. We're basically in Modern. Well, maybe not quite so much in Modern because Bloodbraid Elf just got banned, but and Legacy as well, and also Standard is this sort of middle of the road Jund decks that we're seeing, where their win percentage is around 50-50. It's really weird. They kind of get 51-49-ish on you. And they have a lot of answers, and they're just so arguably middle of the road that they're not necessarily the best deck to play, but they're never a bad deck to play.
Right.
And that can mean a lot. And I know a lot of people around the FNM scene right now are playing Jund midrange, and it's doing a lot of 4-0s on Standard Online. It's top 8ing almost every event that's going on right now. My argument against that deck is because if you look at the deck and you go, God, 2 people top 8 with Jund midrange, 2 people top 8 with Jund midrange, another guy top 8, top 4 with Jund midrange. If you remember the Modern Pro Tour that Stanislav Sivka won,
Okay.
yes, there was a couple of Jund decks that top 8. 30% of the decks there were Jund midrange. It's one of those decks where a giant percentage of players are playing the deck. So the odds of somebody having a good enough run to make top 8 are in the deck's favor. I don't know if that necessarily means that the deck is good enough to dominate. I just think the deck is good enough to not lose a lot. So I'm not necessarily a giant fan of that deck.
And you feel like the Angels are good against that?
Yeah, definitely, because they're playing Thragtusk, they're playing Olivia, they're playing Huntmasters that may be flaked by the time they're casting this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're playing, I don't know if they're playing Thunder Mahokai quite so much anymore, but they're playing, even Vampire Nighthawk can be kind of a bit of a problem for this deck.
Yeah.
So I would say, because that deck seems like, and they're playing Liliana, I feel like the Jund midrange deck is popular enough that it is the worst matchup for this deck that you have put together. And I feel like Angel of Serenity is one of, you always want to make sure that you keep cards on hand to stop the bad matchups.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think there is like plenty of room in junk colors to create a really solid sideboard for whatever your meta is.
Of course.
And so just sort of kind of knowing that, and if it means you're running this deck, but you're running 50% different sideboard, but you have great reasons, totally good on you.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because we've actually got a little bit of a sideboard challenge attached to this deck that I'm going to introduce today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's sort of a little bit of a lazy reason, I'm not gonna lie. But keep in mind, this is not my deck. This is not something I came up with. This is a deck that I've actually lost to the past 2 times I've had to play it. And I really don't know what you do to combat it, because it either goes off or it doesn't. And when it does, it's very embarrassing. We got a buddy that we play with named Matt Seckel. He made this deck and he gave me permission to introduce it on the show. This is Matt Seckel's Elf Crater Hoof Behemoth deck. So this is very similar to, I would say, the Hoof There It Is deck that I don't remember who made it or where it came from. But the idea is you play a bunch of elves, you ramp into Crater Hoof Behemoth, and you make all your elves +8/+8 and trample, and then you just run everyone over. Well, this deck seems incredibly more resilient, because that deck is basically just quick ramp up, hope nobody verdicts you in the process, and then you're golden. Except for the fact that this deck has a little bit more nuggets in the middle, so that if it doesn't hit the Crater Hoof combo, it has some other things that it does to combo off and win the game this way. So, as you can tell, it's pretty much all elves. So what we've got, real quick, is 4 Arbor Elves, obviously. It's playing a lot of forests, or dual lands that are part forests.
That's where the elves live.
Yes, the elves live in the forest.
Duh.
You're an idiot. He's got 2 Deathrite Shamans. So as we continue through this deck, I'm going to critique it kind of as we go.
Okay.
Because I think there's a lot of room for interpretation in this deck. I would probably try and piece this together. There are some things he expressed that he's not entirely sure if they are the best. But keep in mind that, as we say time and time again, tweak your lists for your meta. Don't just repeat deck lists, because that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're the best. By the time you read the deck lists, other people have also read the deck lists and are preparing things to beat.
Right.
So keep that in mind. Tweaking is always a good thing. So we got 4 Arbor Elves, obviously, 2 Deathrite Shamans. I'm not really sure about the Deathrite Shamans.
What it's doing.
I'm not really sure what it does. It's not really ramping anymore. Yes, it's 2 more elves. And the reason is because he's got 3 ofs and 2 more slots that I feel like you could just take out the Deathrite Shamans and play
To get your
a
place.
full 4.
Right, which
of
will
these
make
other
it
things.
more consistent.
Because he's got 3 Gyre Sages, which we now know from Zach Hill is pronounced Gyre Sage. And he's got 3 Corrosive Guild Mages.
Yeah, that's totally interesting.
Now, people are going, Corrosive Guild Mage. Now, I talked, before, there used to be this kind of cool combo that everyone was fantasizing about, where when Corrosive Guild Mage got previewed and everyone was looking at it, somebody went, well, turn 2 you play Corrosive Guild Mage. Turn 3 you play Champion of Landhold.
Okay.
Turn 4 you play Tree of Redemption. Turn 5 you spend the 5 mana for Corrosive Guild Mage's ability, sacrifice Tree of Redemption, make 13 Saproling token. Champion of Landhold becomes a 14/14 unblockable creature.
That's crazy.
Which is obviously not super viable. That's my dog, Magnolia. You're fine. Stop. Thank you very much. It's just the mail lady. So, people are like, why Corrosive Guild Mage? Well, I didn't really know why either until he unleashed this brutal combo on me, which we will talk about once we get through all the cards. I feel like because the Deathrite Shamans don't really seem to do much other than be elves in the deck, that he could very easily take those out and add 2 more, add 1 more Gyre Sage, add 1 more Corrosive Guild Mage.
Yeah, your elf count stays the same.
Your elf count stays the same, and adding, this is not a deck that's worried about the difference between 1 and 2, because you're playing Arbor Elf and you're playing 4 Elfish Archdruids, which are really the linchpin of the deck. This is the way that you go basically from 3 mana to 8 mana, like that. Like, it's really annoying. Like, if you're ever facing down this deck and you see Elvish Archdruid hit the table, you either kill it or you're going to lose the game. It's really kind of how this deck runs. He's got 4 Elvish Visionaries. There is a fair amount of card draw in this, which is really beneficial. Elvish Visionary is a great turn 2 sort of dirtle, but helps draw. You're just looking for creative beats. Is really all you're looking for. So obviously those are a bunch of elves, and yes, the idea of the deck is to play elf, ramp up into Craterhoof Behemoth, play Craterhoof Behemoth, have all of your elves get giant, and then just win the game in a swing. But here's where the fun starts coming in.
Sure.
Everyone's wanted to know, when do I get to play Master Biomancer?
When do I get to play it?
You get to play Master Biomancer right now.
Oh man!
Because Master Biomancer's an elf.
Oh, I didn't even know that right now. I literally did not know that.
He's an elf.
Brilliant.
So not only does he help the deck, but he also helps, number one, when you start top decking some of these mana dorks later in the game, they get a little bigger.
Right.
And this is a deck that doesn't play one Master Biomancer. This is a full playset of Biomancers. So you're talking all the time. 2 Biomancers hit the table.
Ugh.
They're not legendary creatures.
Right. Which is a good thing to keep in mind. Like, mythic does not mean legendary.
Exactly. Because sometimes you're playing an Elvish Visionary that is like its own mini Zagana. It's like, hi, I'm a 5/5 and I'll draw a card.
That's ridiculous.
So the reason that this gets so bonkers crazy is because Master Biomancer works amazingly with Corrose the Guildmage. Because here's what, for those of you who don't really remember what Corrose the Guildmage does, it's the Golgari Guildmage. So what it does is it has 2 pay for abilities. It's 1 a green and a black. Target creature gets +1/+1 and Intimidate, which means it can only be blocked by creatures of its color.
Or
and artifact creatures. And the other thing that it does is 5 mana. I think it's 3 a green and black. Sacrifice target creature, put a 1/1 Saproling into play for each point of that creature's toughness. So if I sacrifice a Thragtusk, I get 3/1/1. Well, here's the thing. You're playing these cards with Master Biomancers on the table. So these cards are coming in as 3/3s or 4/4s.
Right.
Then you play Corrose the Guildmage. You use Corrose the Guildmage's sacrifice ability.
Well, sorry, real quick. So, if you have a Master Biomancer out,
Yes.
right, then you play your second one. That second one comes in as a
6.
4/6. So then you play a 1/1. Just because I want to make this very, very clear.
Correct.
So then you play a 1/1, and so it's gonna get
It's going to trigger off of both Biomancers.
5. So it'll be a 7/7.
Yes.
Okay, continue.
So you play Corrose the Guildmage. You play one of these creatures that becomes a 7/7, right? So you play an Elvish Visionary, now you've got a 7/7 Elvish
Was
Visionary.
it for mana? 2 mana?
For 2 mana.
2 mana. Okay, 2 mana, 7/7. Oh, okay.
Draw a card.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Then, because this deck has an abundance of mana, this deck hits 8 on turn 4. You pay 5 to sacrifice said 7/7. You get a 1/1 token per each point of that's toughness.
Oh my goodness.
As the token comes into play, it triggers both Master Biomancers.
So 2 mana for a 7/7, then 5 mana for 7.
For 7
7/7s. Holy mother. Okay.
This deck is insane.
We're both smiling really huge.
Isn't that insane?
That's so awesome.
That deck is so nasty. Like, out of nowhere, this deck goes from 0 to 60.
Oh man. Did you just remember, like, did he ever swing for like an epic amount of damage at all?
Dude, I have not beaten this deck yet.
Right. What do you remember? What was like the most he ever swung for? Was there
I
ever
don't
that
count.
moment?
If he drops Craterhoof Behemoth, I usually just scoop. Or he did the Corrose the Guildmage combo to me, and I just went, oh yeah, you got it.
Jeez, Lou.
Yeah, but keep in mind, you're playing Master Biomancer, right? Being able to play your 2 mana 7/7 and have 5 mana left over to do that in one turn is what this deck does. Because your Elvish Archdruid is putting 1 mana, he taps for 1 green per elf. And all your elves get +1/+1.
Jeez.
So your Master Biomancers are actually coming in as 3/5s.
Oh, I didn't even count that in. Okay. Jeez, oh Lou.
He's got 4 Thrag Tusks, obviously, because getting to 5 mana is not a problem in this deck. You get there by turn 3, and you need a little bit of life, and you need a little bit of resilience in this deck to combo off. But I saw this deck go 3 games with Night Humans, and we put up a serious fight. It's surprisingly resilient. It dumps a lot of guys on the table out of nowhere, and then it just digs for Crater Hoof Behemoth. So he's got obviously the 4th Thrag Tusk, and after that he's got 3 copies of Crater Hoof Behemoth. So you just hit a mana, you play it, you win the game.
That's fun.
Now I ended up playing this deck with the Black White Zombies list, and I was looking at it and I was going, and my opponent looked at me and went, oh god, Blind Obedience looks like it actually is going to be a big problem for me because Crater Hoof Behemoth will come and tap. And I went, well, no, not really, because he still pumps all the other guys on the table, so he really only stops one of your 7/7 trample.
Right. Of your million.
Right. So the question here is why 3 instead of 4? Well, we'll get to that in a second because he's actually decided to run one of something else as opposed to a 4th Crater Hoof Behemoth that is actually more embarrassing to sit across from when he actually drops it on the table.
I know you're talking about.
He's got 2 Garruk Primal Hunters. I don't know how I feel about this as a main board option. It seems more of a sideboard option because I feel like there's something smarter here that you can combo off with. Obviously, having Garruk Primal Hunter and playing it after you play turn 4 Master Biomancer is great because then Garruk starts making 5/5s, or if you have an Arch Druid, he starts making 6/6s,
Right.
Beast tokens, as opposed to just making 3/3s. That can be an incredible combo, but I feel like Garruk on his own. I'm wondering if the strategy is to use Garruk as more of one of those card draw mechanics that Green really wishes for.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
because you're drawing a ton of cards.
being able to draw and guarantee getting one of those combo pieces, getting to that Crater Hoof Behemoth might be the reason to have it in the deck. So I am a little skeptical, but again, I haven't played this, so I don't really know how it rocks. But please check this deck out because it seems super cheap to put together and so easy to run. And I would really like to see if Garruk Primal Hunter does well. He's got 2 Prophetic Prisms in here. Now, that is a card where I think a lot of people are going, Prophetic Prism, why? Well, here's the reason. Number 1, the card replaces itself, so you play it and you draw. The other reason is, this is really a green deck that needs 1 blue mana for 1 card and 1 black mana for another card.
Okay.
This is a deck that you only need the blue mana to help cast Master Biomancer. You only need 1 black mana to help cast Corrosive to Guildmage. And because of that, it's beneficial for him to run certain land structure, but it's a little easier for him to play this as a color fixer, get a cycle out of it. He said he's kind of playing with it, but against me it worked really, really well.
Then the prism came out.
Yeah, and it also, the other thing is it helps him cast multiple times. So it helps him, because he's got so much mana to play with. He's talking about having 7 to 8 mana a turn to play with. Being able to cast Master Biomancer in a turn. Being able to cast Corrosive Guildmage and Master Biomancer in a turn is something this deck does that helps it win so dominantly. So the Prophetic Prism actually functions really well. The other reason that it's in there is because it's a color fixer that's a permanent.
Okay.
And the reason that is so big is because of this 1/of that he has in the deck to replace the 3rd Crater Hoof Behemoth. He's running 1 Primal Surge. Okay? Okay? So just so you guys know, Primal Surge is 10 mana.
Oh, man. It's so good.
Yeah. Do you know Primal Surge?
Yeah, totally.
Do you remember what it does?
Yeah. You start just flipping over cards in your library, and as long as is it a non-land permanent or just a permanent?
Exile the top of your library. If it's a permanent, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you do, repeat this process.
Right.
Now, the wording behind that is really important because it doesn't say you can play it. Because keep in mind, you're only allowed to play 1 land per turn. Putting lands on the battlefield is a different story. So, Primal Surge allows you to put lands on the table without violating that rule. Now, we saw Con of the Woods play around with a Primal Surge deck for a little bit that just played all permanents. And if you look through his deck,
Avatar has
he
respawned.
took out some Farseeks, he took out some spells. This deck is